The Cubs have lost 6 series in a row, but they get the worst team in baseball, Chicago White Sox, in town this week with a chance to get back on the right track. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about those White Sox and how they're on a historic losing streak on the south side of Chicago and some great Cubs Sox moments in the past, and then look ahead to the Cubs schedule in the future. That and more on this edition of the Cubs Baseball Channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. Jump in the comment section. Let us know how you're feeling. Ring the bell and give us a like, because that means go Cubs go, and that's what we hope to be singing later on today. Here's your invitation to our show. What do you say, everybody? I'm Anthony Pasquale with Mick Gillespie, and on Twitter at @Ant_Pasquale3. He's at Broadcaster Mick. And Mick, this Cubs team has been a little bit ugly lately. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, you couldn't play the worst team in baseball at a better time for the Cubs. And there's so many reasons why I'm worried about what's going on right now with this team. Waiting for the star players to look like stars. You got the bullpen's been so bad. I mean, this team could be so much better if the bullpen was just halfway good. And yet there's still only 2 games under 500. So there's still a lot of hope out there.
There is some hope. It's frustrating because if you break down like every game into 3 facets, you got starting pitching, you've got hitting, and you've got relief pitching. It seems like the Cubs cannot get a game with all 3. Like if you get 6 innings shutout, the offense isn't scoring a run and the bullpen's going to give up the lead. If your starting pitching gives up 5 runs, the offense is going to give you 5 runs that day, but then the bullpen's going to blow it again. Like you just can't seem to figure out to get all 3 pieces working. But like you mentioned, you get to play the White Sox now, who are in the midst of a very bad stretch. But here's the thing that always worries me about the White Sox. No matter how good or how bad they are, they want to beat us so bad that you're going to get their best game. I mean, they've only won, they're 15-45, something like that, 30 games below, and it's June 3rd. But you're going to get the absolute best version of the White Sox for 2 days at Wrigley.
Yeah, but you look at how bad these guys are, right? If the Cubs win tonight, that'll match 1927, the 3rd longest White Sox losing streak, right? If the Cubs win both games, it would be 13 straight losses for the White Sox. Then you got to go all the way back to 1924. The White Sox longest losing streak was 15 games in 67. So that gives you an idea of how bad these guys are. But at the same time, you're right. I know that. It doesn't matter the record. When the Cubs come, they're so sick of hearing about the Cubs because the White Sox could play, in, I don't know, in Idaho, and they'd still have about the same following as they do on the South Side. They're just such an after-market type of team. People don't really pay attention to them. The Cubs are always Chicago's team first, and I know that frustrates them. And they do have their fans, right? They do have their fans, but it's like they're a team playing in the Cubs media market, and I think that motivates them to want to go out there and beat the Cubs. And honestly, it's not like the Cubs are coming in with a whole bunch of momentum either.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like you look at this series against the White Sox and you think like anything less than a sweep is disappointing. But the fact of the matter is you haven't played like a baseball team that could sweep another baseball team in over a month. And they're coming in losing 11 in a row. So they're bound to fall into one at some point. And it just seems like, and like you said, you're catching them at the best possible time. But I don't think as your team, you're catching them at the best possible time because the amount of pressure that's probably going to be on these guys. Oh, man, we can't lose to the White Sox. They're the worst team in baseball. And they want to beat us so bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then you throw up, let me throw up the schedule and kind of look at that. Now that the Cubs are passed for second by the Cardinals, I mean, it seems like everything's falling apart, but it's only a 2-game series, right? So, I mean, all you got to do is win 2 games, but in baseball, you got to win the first game before you win the second game, and then we're looking at this schedule, and as bad as things have been for the Cubs, there's a lot of wins, I feel like, in this month of June if they can just get things together.
Yeah, there kind of has to be. Up until that end of June series in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen against Milwaukee, the Cubs play the next 20-something games against teams with records below 500, and teams with records worse than the Cubs, with the exception of the Cardinals, who just recently passed the Cubs up. Obviously, the White Sox are one of the worst teams in baseball. The Reds, we go to their place for 4 after they took 2 out of 3 from us. They have a worse record than us. The Rays haven't had the year that they were expecting. The Giants, I think, are in 3rd in the NL West, and we get 7 games against them and then 3 against the Mets this time in Chicago before you get the Brewers at the end of the month. So you hope you're down 7.5, I think, to the Brewers right now. You hope at that series by the end of the month, that number is much smaller.
Yeah, right. And it all comes down to where you start tonight, where you start to try to get things figured out. I thought that the promotion of David Bodie and sending Nick Madrigal down to Iowa was a good start. I just think they've got to do stuff to, kind of mix this roster up, try to find a spark of energy. Cody Bellinger starting to swing the bat, coming back from the rib injury. Suzuki, his defense to me, and sometimes even base running isn't great, but what he can do. I mean, they just got to get more production from their best players.
Yeah, and it's starting to turn. The offense hasn't been abysmal for the last 3 or 4 games. I think Suzuki is now on a 10-game hitting streak, and Cody Bellinger's finally getting some power back. So those are good starts. The one that's really concerning to me right now, we've talked about Dansby Swanson a lot, but Christopher Morel is concerning to me, and he keeps on hitting the ball hard right at people or soft contact or striking out. And his average has dipped way below 200. And at some point, it's not just bad luck. At some point, you got to start hitting the ball better. And if he hasn't run into a few home runs here and there, we'd be looking at a guy that we'd be talking about sending back down to Iowa, quite frankly. And he's a guy that I think needs to be better, especially if Craig Counsell is so hell-bent at keeping him in the cleanup spot. He's got to start doing some cleanup, because the guys ahead of him, Horner or Happ, whoever's leading off, or even Talkman, and then Suzuki and Bellinger, they're getting on. Morel's come up in so many big spots lately and hasn't been able to pull the trigger. Those hits have to start falling.
I just don't feel like he's been the same player since the 13 pitch at bat foul ball off of his big toe or whatever toe it got, and then getting hit in that same foot. And I'm hoping that the off day yesterday will be some rest that will help him get better, because he has had some bad luck. He's going to strike out. He's going to have some bad at bats. It's just who he is. But it just doesn't feel like he's been quite the player that he would be had he not been, nicked up. And when your feet, your hands, they're so important. Your wrists, they're so important to hitting, and it takes those areas of your body a little longer to heal, just because of how you were structured as people.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that's the case. But the other part of this, though, is there's other people that you can put into these spots. I mean, these guys can have days off, right? And that's what I'm saying. That's why I like to have, Bodie, to me, at least gives you a chance to hit a home run and give you some hard contact. I know some of you guys got in the comment section like, the reason Bodie was down there is because he wasn't any good. Well, neither was Nick Madrigal. So
yeah, it's not some sort of, he's not going to be your savior. He's not going to turn your team around, but he's a better last option than Nick Madrigal. And if you start there, it can only get better.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I'm with you on those. There's when you're not winning, there's so many different things going wrong. It's hard when your team leader's Dansby Swanson and he's not doing anything right now. He did have the home run the other night against the Reds, but I mean, he's just such an easy out at this point, and he's the guy that speaks for the team. And when the guy that speaks for the team's barely over 200, that kind of sets the tables too. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we're just entering June. This team got hot last year. After what was it? July? Part of June and July.
Yeah, so late June. I think it started with the White Sox series again there, and that's when Jed was like, "Oh, maybe we can buy for this team."
Yeah.
And up until all of July, Cody Bellinger was the best hitter in baseball. And you get to the trade deadline, and then they end up adding instead of selling. But one interesting thing, this team is not positioned well to sell. Like all the guys that are struggling that you would like to replace are guys under contract for a while.
Mhm.
You wouldn't trade a guy like Michael Bush
Mm-mm.
because he's so young. Same with Christopher Morel. Your only like real trade bait would be like Talkman or Wisdom or any of those relievers. And we know how bad the relieving pitching has been. So this team kind of has to figure it out. Otherwise, it's probably going to be a quiet end of July and frustrate a lot of people.
Yeah, or maybe you trade a starting pitcher,
True.
to get something that you want, because that's where the Cubs have depth and there's a lot of value there. If you get Jordan Wicks back, and I think that could happen sometime soon,
Mhm.
then maybe you make a deal there, and you need a catcher, absolutely getting nothing from the catcher spot.
Yeah.
Maybe you go in on Pete Alonso. I don't know that that'd be maybe the strategy I'd use, but it would be cool to have, a legitimate
Yeah.
four-hole guy that is always someone you have to pay attention to in the lineup. And I think wherever he goes, I think he's going to be re-energized by getting out of that cesspool that the Mets have going on right now. And it's honestly, it's crazy when their own players are saying, hey, we're the worst team in baseball.
Yeah.
And the White Sox are out there. That's the funny part about the
Yeah.
whole thing. But we'll see what happens, man. I mean, the Cubs have depth in starting pitching. Every team seems to want that. Maybe you make a deal there, and then we've talked about guys in the minor leagues. I'm not opposed to them throwing Owen Casey up to the big leagues, putting him on the 40-man and getting his bat in the lineup. And also his defense. People don't really give him enough credit for defense. He's better than Seiya Suzuki defensively because he just makes all the plays.
Yeah.
He just makes them. I mean, is he electric like Pete Crow Armstrong? No, but he makes all the plays. He's not dropping fly balls. He's not running by line drives. He just does. He just makes the plays. He's got a great arm, and he can hit for power. And every time you turn around, he's crushing the ball down in Iowa. And I got a feeling that his bat's going to play a lot better than Matt Mervis and Michael Bush in the big leagues.
Yeah, and he's played a little bit of first in the minors, so I think that is in the back of Jed Hoyer's mind that maybe he could end up, instead of being an outfielder, being our first baseman of the future. The other thing is every time you look, he's crushing a homer, and he's only 21, so you got to assume it's only going to get better from here. So that's an interesting name to keep an eye on too. But we talked about Christopher Morel, so I got to ask, where does last year's walk-off homer when he ripped his shirt off and was swinging it around on the bases, where does that rank for you in all-time Cubs Sox moments?
That was great. I just got to be right up there.
Yeah.
I think the fight's still number one to me. When we were talking about that Barrett against Przinsky. I remember that, and I was like, man, I mean, you didn't even play these guys that much, and you're getting into a fist fight with them. That was back when it was really interleague play. So, but I thought last year was magical. It really was. I mean, that home run seemed to really jumpstart the team, and what a moment. I don't know. I mean, going back, I mean, I'm trying to think, what other moment would stick out to me more than that. And I guess just because, you don't play them a whole lot.
Yeah. I think you're right. Another one that came into my head was Chris Bryant homering off of Chris Sale in the All-Star game. That was pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, the Morel walk-off, especially for a Cub fan, has to be near the top of the list. And hopefully playing these Sox this time around could get you kind of motivated for the rest of the season. But I wanted to ask you too, did you see Sunday's benches clearing incident between the Brewers and the Sox? First of all, the Brewers have been involved in like 6 benches clearing incidents already, but did you hear Tommy Pham?
Well, first let's like this. I kind of like a team like that's not afraid to go mix it up like the Brewers. They traded away some of their best players. They don't have any money. They lost their manager to the Cubs, and they've kind of got this attitude to them that they're going to go in there and mix it up with you. And I think that sometimes you need an incident. Honestly, I wouldn't mind that happening with the Cubs right now, to bring everybody together, to get everyone kind of minds off of winning and losing and the pressure that goes with it. And I don't want to see anyone get hurt, but over the years, you'll see teams that kind of have those incidents play pretty good baseball. I think the best example to me was when Tampa Bay, I don't even remember what year it was, but they were kind of always a bad team. And then this one year, and I think they went to the World Series that year, and Joe Madden was the manager. They got into a fight with the Yankees, and it was like, after that point, it was like, hey, we're not taking your crap anymore. We're not, you got to be provoked. It's one of those things that has to just happen. But, it definitely brings a team together.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I just thought some of Tommy Pham's comments post-game were definitely interesting. We'll keep an eye on when the Brewers and Sox
what all
play
did he
next
say?
time around. He said, well, first of all, he kind of threw his third base coach under the bus and was like, I was out by a mile. Like, there was nothing else to do except slide right into him. The throw beat me by like 10 feet, and I understand close game late, you got to take a gamble on, an errant throw, but I was hosed. And he was like, and then their catcher, which is William Contreras, started, barking. And he was like, there's a reason I do all this fight training in the off season. I'm prepared to F somebody up. So we'll have to keep an eye on when they play next, because I think Tommy Pham's going to be ready to go.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, no, I didn't see that. That is pretty funny. So here we go. Let's see, fight training. And maybe it's the Sox that kind of will have a little bit of energy after almost getting into a fight. I hope not, though.
Yeah, Cubs Sox tonight at 7:05. A rare 7:05 game. I feel like most of them have been 6:40 at Wrigley, but tonight Cubs play at 7:05. And Shota Imanaga back on the mound. I think you mentioned there's no better time to play the worst team in baseball. I think that has to ring true for Seiya Suzuki, for Shota Imanaga. He had his 10 days rest, came back and got roughed up against the Brewers. This is a good get back on track game for him, and I'm excited to see him pitch. And he'll be up against Chris Flexen, who's 2-5 on the year with a 5.50 ERA. A guy that a lot of Cubs have had success against. Cody Bellinger hitting over 300. Nico Horner and Seiya Suzuki 500 against him. And Dansby Swanson hitting 636 against Flexen. So maybe this is a get-right game for the offense as well.
Yeah, they just got to be more patient at the plate and hit their pitches. It just seems like there's a lot of swing and miss on breaking balls and sliders, and when you swing at it, they just keep throwing more and more to you. So maybe this is a day where they can kind of get locked in and force pitchers to throw fastballs and then hit those, right? But yeah, I hope that Seiya Suzuki is back on track. He got his 10 days rest, which, say what you will about that, and you know what happened afterwards, and now he's back on normal rest again. I wonder when, you listen to the analytics people so much about how to direct the game and all that stuff. What about when they say stuff like this and you think it's a good idea, and you take a guy that was the best pitcher in baseball and he looks rusty after 10 days, or how about Ben Brown? We had to pull him out the start where he's throwing a no-hitter. What about the mental part of that, where he's going to ask himself for the rest of his life, hey, if these guys would have just left me in the game, would my name be at the Hall of Fame where I got the final 6 outs of the game? Is there an analytic for that? Because I'm watching him pitch against the Reds and I'm going, if it was me, I'd be pissed. I don't want to come out of the game. I want to make history here. I want to get the final 6 outs. I want my team to win. And it's like, and then you bounce back. Where's the analytic for that? Because if you throw over 100 pitches, obviously your arm breaks off. And so I guess we just didn't want to take the risk on that. But do we look at the analytics the other way and go, hey, man, maybe this isn't an exact science?
Yeah.
Those are two moves that bother me.
Yeah. And I think looking at the aftermath of both of those moves, I think it favors the non-analytical side. And no, there's not an analytic for thought and your mental health, like your mental and all of that. So it's definitely something that I feel like should be a little bit more of a factor. The one that always sticks out to me is the World Series a few years ago when Blake Snell was dealing against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
And they take him out, and immediately Mookie Betts hits a 2-run double, and the Rays season ends. But he had given up no runs through 6 innings, I believe it was.
Yeah. And he didn't want to pitch there anymore.
Yeah, and he left and won a Cy Young. So let's keep an eye on that. But yeah, Cubs Sox tonight. Make sure you guys get in the comment section, like and subscribe. Hopefully we have a win to discuss tomorrow. Mick, any final thoughts?
No, just I'm excited to watch this game. Fingers are crossed that the Cubs go out there and get the job done. I mean, you lose to these guys, you think it's bad now? Oh my goodness. Think about how tomorrow's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Cubs Twitter might be a very scary place if the Cubs don't win tonight.
Let's help the Sox make history.
Yeah, let's help the Sox make some history. Jump in the comment section, guys. Let us know your favorite Cubs Sox moment. But for now, like and subscribe, ring the bell. We will talk to you guys soon. For Mick, I'm Anthony. Go Cubs.